Why do we continually choose food over freedom? Calories can be a big factor. Just because they're a factor doesn't mean that I believe that you should even bother to count them. A ketogenic diet has really worked great for me, and it's the thing that helped me break away. If you do low carb and you do low fat, you're probably not going to want to stay on the diet. People will think that by restricting their food, that they're restricting their choices. Why do we continually choose food over freedom? How do we break the chains? How do we get away from being so tethered, so tied, so handcuffed to our food? It seems like an impossible thing. The foods that we have available taste too good. The food chain here in the United States, we have a plethora of food and beverages. They are everywhere. Walk into a Safeway, walk into a Walmart, walk into a Target. A lot of these department stores that used to just basically sell clothes now sell a bunch of food too, because they know how addicted to food we are. And we have a tendency to want to blame big food, and we want to get mad at them. And maybe they done us wrong. You know, maybe they done us dirty because some of the cereal boxes have a heart on them, and they say it's, you know, by the American Heart Association, right? They put food dyes and weird things in our food that for some reason they don't put those things in other foods in other countries. However, we still have to take responsibility. I loved recently Jack Cruz saying in an interview when he was talking to Callie Means, he said, "And you want to sit here and talk about Fruit Loops?" I really like that a lot, because there's a lot of other things to talk about other than just what's on the agenda and what big food is doing. Big food is just trying to serve us, trying to feed us. And they know what we like. They know what we're interested in. We love sugar, we love salt, and we love fat. Just run that same play again, over and over and over again, and that's our favorite thing to eat. All the way to the point where if you ask somebody nowadays what their favorite food is, they very rarely will actually tell you about a real food. Most of the time they'll say pizza, and you say, "What's your second favorite thing? What's your second favorite food?" And they'll say ice cream. And you're like, okay, well, I guess these are forms of food, and at least there's some dairy in there, and there's some calcium, and there's some protein from cheese and milk and so forth. But these are all things that are going to keep us tethered and tied to the biggest problem that we face, and that's just food addiction. There's a lot of problems going on, but us being addicted to stuff is probably the biggest one. And what came first? You know, what causes food addiction? We'll get into that in a little bit, because sometimes when you bring certain things up about food addiction, sometimes people change the channel because they're like, no, it's not that. But there are things that go just beyond the taste buds. The taste buds, the smell, the sensations, all the different things that we feel when we're engaging in those kinds of foods. What I have been working on for a really long time, what I've been trying to communicate for a really long time, is that calories can be a big factor. And I don't want to make them sound like they're not a factor. They are a factor. But just because they're a factor doesn't mean that I believe that you should even bother to count them. The reason why is because I would rather have you obsess, and I mean obsess. I'd rather have you obsess over food choices and how you consume that food. I love food. I was addicted to food. I was tethered to food. I was tied to food. I was chained to food. I could not get away from it. Growing up the way that I did with 2 older brothers and a loving family, and awesome grandparents and aunts and uncles. The way that we showed love in my family was with a plate of pasta and some meatballs and some sausage, and too much food consistently, kind of all the time. There was always dessert. There was always brownies or ice cream. My grandmother always had ice cream in her freezer, always had ice cream in her freezer. She had 9 kids and still always had ice cream in her freezer. My grandfather put butter on everything. You know, that's what I grew up seeing, and that's one of the things I remember most about him, is that he would put butter on a hamburger. Kind of a genius guy, right? You might think butter on a hamburger sounds kind of weird, but you put butter on your steak, don't you? Right? So he put butter on everything. He would tell my grandmother, he said, Marie, I'm not going to work unless you cook me 4 eggs and with 4 slices of bacon. And he literally wouldn't go to work on the railroad for that particular day if she didn't cook for him. Some old school stuff was going on in that household. You know, when I was growing up, there just became more and more highly processed foods. And so there was more snacks, and just an explosion of all of these things kind of came into the fray and came into the picture. And we have to take personal accountability and personal responsibility for it, even if you're currently addicted. You have to figure out how can you get away from that addiction. And then from there, you need to figure out how can we help some other people. And maybe if you don't care that much about helping other people, I bet you would care to help your significant other, or I bet you would care to help your grandma, or I bet you would care to help your own children, right? I hope that you care about your own children. So food choices are really important, and this is why a ketogenic diet has really worked great for me, and it's the thing that helped me break away. In around 1994, 1995, 1993, it's all a blur, somewhere in there, I jumped on a ketogenic diet because my brother Chris was powerlifting, and he was getting ready for a powerlifting meet, and he wanted to cut weight. And the guy told him the best way for him to cut weight and to still be strong at this powerlifting meet was for him to go on a ketogenic diet just for a little bit. And basically he just told him meat and water. And so bam, the war on carbs was sort of built from that day. What I noticed, and what my brothers noticed, and what many other people have noticed that have switched to a higher fat diet or a high fat, high protein diet, because not all these diets are always so keto. You know, clinical ketosis is when you're eating low amounts of protein and you're eating very, very high amounts of fat, and your body is readily turning a lot of that fat into ketones, so you have that as a source of energy. For myself, I've pretty much have always done a modified version of that, where your proteins are up a little higher. For me personally, I have felt that that has helped a bunch of different things, a bunch of different ways, but there may be reasons to bounce back and forth between an adapted or adjusted ketogenic diet and a regular ketogenic diet, but that is another video for another day. In my opinion, when you start to do low carb, if you do low carb and you do low fat, you're probably going to run into trouble, and you're probably not going to want to stay on the diet. However, if you do very low carb, almost like no carb, you're trying literally not to eat any carbs, and you consume good amounts of fat every single day, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 to 150 grams of fat at least on the lower end. For most people, that would probably suffice to be in that range. And for some, that might seem like a lot of fat. But again, that's where a lot of your energy is going to come from. How does some of this tie into what I was talking about in the beginning? How we are consistently choosing food over freedom? Well, when you choose to eat a bag of Doritos, or when you choose to eat a granola bar, there's not enough mechanisms in that naturally to satiate you. You're not going to find the grams of protein that your body needs at the bottom of a bag of Doritos. No matter how much you wish that to be true, it ain't going to happen. It's not going to happen at the bottom of a pint of Ben & Jerry's. It's not going to happen at the top either. So there's no way to circumvent this. And you can't just like swill down a protein shake with your Doritos. Like, shit don't work that way. We actually need to have real sources of protein. Protein shakes and stuff like that can be great to up your amino acids, to give you a little boost in terms of your overall protein consumption for the day. But we need satiation, we need satisfaction, and we also need a little bit of distension. You're not going to really get that. I guess sometimes you can get that from a protein shake if you make them a little bit on the thicker side. But you guys know what I mean. Real food is what I'm talking about for right now, because we're trying to get you a little bit more away from the highly processed food. As much as I love protein powder, as much as I love my total carnivore shakes that I sell, those are highly processed foods. Those are things to try to give you different options, to give you different tastes, give you different flavors, so that you're not only tied down to only eating meat. Your food choices are critical, and having natural foods is really important. When we start to eat meat, you start to eat even vegetables, you start to have some fruit. Fruit has a lot of cofactors in it that make everything go together. And our proteins do too. It's rare to find protein in nature completely by itself. Normally, when we find protein straight up by itself, it's usually some sort of kind of man-made situation, or some sort of situation where we cut away the skin of a chicken breast or something like that, or we made, separated the egg yolks out from the egg whites and just have egg whites, which are pretty much just straight up protein. And we've talked about that here at the Single Digit Body Fat series, about how we can use that to our advantage and how we can leverage that. But in this video, we're talking about something slightly different. I'm still talking about getting shredded and everything, because this could be the means, this could be the start of your journey. So just because this is a Single Digit Body Fat series doesn't mean that the series isn't for everybody. I'm hoping that everyone does have an opportunity to listen to this, and that they don't think that I'm only talking to a small subset of people, because losing body fat is similar for everyone. Now, losing body fat for someone that's obese and losing body fat for someone that's already very lean, they do have some differences, but the mechanisms, the mechanics, and so many of the rules are very similar. This is why the calorie equation gets to be kind of annoying sometimes, because I hate that little bastard. I want to not even believe it. I want to write it off and be like, I want to just say that it's stupid or say that it's dumb. But it's not stupid or dumb. Usually what happens is most of the things that I find that assist with somebody losing body fat, they almost invariably end up kind of resorting back to the fact that there's some sort of alteration to the caloric load, whether it be someone using Ozempic or somebody using protein leveraging, or whether it's someone doing 1 meal a day or just 2 meals a day, or whether it's somebody doing a fasting every other day protocol, or whether it's someone doing keto. What's worked for me in losing over 100 pounds, I think it's like we're up to like 120 pounds that I've lost so far. What's worked best for me in this whole entire situation is continually making better food choices. It is hard for me to say this out loud because it almost doesn't sound or feel like it's true. But as Kurt Angle would say, it's true, it's damn true.
Oh, it's true, it's damn true.
I am no longer ruled by food. I have conquered it. However, I will still occasionally overeat. I will stuff myself occasionally when I'm watching TV. I got the same bad habits as some of you guys. I still will make some bad decisions, but what I mean by I conquered food is I'm no longer addicted to the junk. The ties have been severed. They have been cut. And yes, there's still a strong enough pull there to where I still want to have legendary tasty pastries. I still want to have a chocolate fudge keto brick. I still want to have some of these things, but the days of me going and having a cheat day / it turns into a cheat weekend / it turns into a cheat week, all of that is over. And it's taken me a long time. It's been killed off very slowly. Like I would say that, I would say within the last year or year and a half or so, I finally was really able to slay that dragon. But it took a long ass time. And it takes a realization of realizing like there's no dragon, there's no beast, there's no animal within you that's taking over. It's you. It's you being addicted. Okay, like there's really no reason to talk about whether it's your choice or not. I think it's quite obvious that we are all pretty different. I think it's quite obvious that some humans were selected to be bigger than other humans, whether it be height or whether it be how wide they are or how heavy they are. I think it's obvious that we all have some differences there. However, even with those differences, I don't think anyone was predetermined or pre-selected to be 200 pounds overweight. And that's not to try to be offensive. That's to actually just make a point that we're not designed to carry around a lot of that extra weight, and we have to figure out ways of getting away from some of that. And in my opinion, the best way to get away from a lot of that is to make better food decisions and better food choices. And nothing locks you in, again, this is my opinion, better than a ketogenic style diet, a carnivore style diet, and or utilizing some fasting. There's been some questions in the comments, and the answer is yes. I use all of those things. People are like, what about keto, carnivore, and fasting? I'm like, yeah, let's do all of them. Let's utilize all of those things. Let's utilize the strategies of fasting occasionally. Let's utilize the strategies of keto occasionally, but let's also utilize the calorie restriction that we can sometimes get from primarily just eating protein, doing like a protein sparing modified fast. You've heard me talk about that before, protein leveraging. Because protein leveraging, what we know when we consume a lot of protein, we bring that protein percentage up, then that would mean that the fat percentage isn't going with it in this case. If you're going to use protein as a lever and use protein as a leverage to pull, you're going to basically just want to increase the amount of lean protein that you're consuming. But over time, that will lead to you being very hungry. So again, remember, I talk about this a lot. I mentioned this many times over, is that you can do that, and that can be awesome, and that can really pull a lot of fat off of you, but it comes at a price. You're going to feel hungry, you're going to feel tired, you're going to feel fatigued. How do we not feel hungry, tired, or fatigued? That's what we're talking about in this video mainly today. We're trying to block that so you can just make it through. We need salt, we need fat, we need protein. Salt, fat, protein. Over and over and over again. Salt, fat, and protein. There's also some things that you can do. You can start to learn more about yourself. What's your favorite meal of the day? Do you like breakfast? Do you like lunch? Do you like dinner? I always loved breakfast. My mom used to cook me breakfast when I was a kid. She used to make me feel special because my brothers were both older. I was the youngest. I was the baby of the family. I didn't always get to do the cool stuff that they got to do. I kind of felt left out. So my mom would make me breakfast, and breakfast would be absolutely amazing. She'd make me French toast and a bunch of other amazing stuff that I don't eat anymore. But she'd make me amazing breakfast, and I still to this day love breakfast. What I would eat nowadays, though, is probably an omelet. It might have ham, it might have bacon, it might have sausage, it might have all those things. It might have sun-dried tomatoes, might have some vegetables in there. Who knows what it'll have in there, but I love, one of my favorite things, the big ass omelet. I also like coffee. I like coffee with some heavy cream in it. So when you start to learn these things about yourself, you can then treat yourself, but now it's in a different way. It's like, okay, well, I'm on a keto diet, and every Wednesday I'm gonna go to my favorite breakfast place. I'm gonna order this big ass omelet. I'm gonna eat this meal. It's gonna be absolutely delicious. And then that's it. I'm gonna go back and on my way and on to my day and do things the way I normally do them. Well, because I know that about myself, I also know these other things about myself. I love football, huge football fan. I love to eat when I watch football. Football is one of my favorite things to do. I've loved football since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And I love to eat food. And what do you eat when you watch football? You eat wings. And so my wife made me a bunch of buffalo wings yesterday. They were absolutely incredible. I ate a steak with that, and then even later had some salmon. Amazing. It was great. I got to watch both the NFC and the AFC championship games, just kind of lounged around and laid around a little bit. But in the morning, I got after it. I ran this very arboretum right here and did about 12 or 13 pretty hard sprints. And I did the whole thing nasal breathing. So I would sprint / run and then walk in between and just kept everything nasal breathing, ended up going for about 5 miles. So for you guys, for some of you that don't like to run, on when you know these things about yourself and you know these particular days where maybe you want to eat a little bit more than normal because your favorite event is on, your favorite sporting event is on, your favorite TV series you and your wife are going to watch tonight or whatever, when you know these things about yourself, why not, like, rather than trying to suppress anything and be like, I'm just going to sit there and like not eat anything, or rather than be like, oh man, I wish I had a bag of chips so bad. Why not just get some Legendary chips or get some Quest chips? They have them at Target, they have them at Walmart. Why not try to find a substitute or a replacement? Because remember, yes, we're trying to get away from some of those highly processed, hyper palatable foods. And yes, some of the foods I'm mentioning right now are highly processed and hyper palatable. But the Legendary chips have like 150 calories in them. And I'm not even saying that you need to buy that. Like, you can have other options. You can get like, you can just go on Instagram and watch Instagram Reels and you'll see how creative people get. But if you're not creative with it, then maybe you just get a veggie tray and maybe you get some cottage cheese and you're eating that. At least you're eating something, right? While you're watching TV, because a lot of you are probably like myself. You're probably used to that shit. So learn, like, what are some of your things? What are some of the things that you like? Not just what's your favorite food, but like do you really love to go out to a restaurant every once in a while with some friends and have some food and have some good conversation? Well, go and do that. But do that full keto. Do that full blast, full bore, as keto as you can possibly make it. And even when you look at the menu right away, I mean, I just did this. I was in LA for a few days and they brought out the menu. They had shrimp, they had oysters. We got like tons of shrimp and tons of oysters for the table. And I ordered a salad, and then my steak came, and my steak even had a lobster, crab on it as well. It was amazing. I mean, I left there, I was like, holy crap, like that was unbelievable, super filling and fulfilling. You know, it just kind of fills you up in every way possible. It's checking all the boxes for satiety and satisfaction. I just see so many people they're not checking those boxes. And I think that's what routinely is making people choose. They continually are choosing their food over their freedom. When you are continually choosing these foods that are shitty for us, they are, in my opinion, they are leaving you tethered to not just big food, but also big pharma. Then you got to think about your insurance, and you got to think, it just drags you in to a giant mess that you could have perhaps avoided if you didn't end up with a metabolic disorder. It gets to be, when you talk about, you know, choosing some of these, when we talk about having poor choices of food, it's super understandable how we can get into that, how we can get wrapped up in that. But it's a continuous cycle. You know, pizza begets pizza. The more pizza that you're going to eat, the more that you're going to want it. And over time, you want to do your best to distance yourself from it. And what I'm proposing here today is that the only way to distance yourself from it is to have replacements for it. And we need replacements that are going to nourish us and that are going to actually feel really good. And the way that you're going to do that is with better food choices. So again, the calorie thing, it's a double-edged sword, the calorie thing, because it's a big factor. It does matter. And some of the things I'm suggesting, it will assist you and help you to eat less over time. And that is going to be the magic pill that will help you ultimately lose weight over time. But it just might take a while. It might take a few months for you to really even start to lose significant amounts of weight, because it takes a long time to even learn exactly what to eat. Some people may feel that restricting food is going to be a lot less fun and that it's going to kind of pigeonhole them into having less choices. But ultimately, choosing better foods is going to give you better choices over time. You're still going to be able to run the same way you did as a kid. You're going to be able to jump the same way as you did as a kid. You're going to be able to maybe potentially be as mobile and so on. The list of things goes on that you'll have access to if you're not 375 pounds. If you can figure out ways to maintain your diet, figure out ways to stay tethered to some sort of exercise or some sort of movement practice of some sort, some type of training, then you will also not have to even worry as much about your nutrition as you age. If you continually just have made good food choices, reasonable good food choices throughout your life, then potentially you don't have to. This is stuff that I've taught my children, because my kids will ask me a lot about like the keto diet. They're kind of like, ah, should I? I'm like, you can do it if you want, but like my children, they're not doing the keto diet and then drinking a giant like chocolate milk. You know what I mean? Like they have their own nutritious means and their own nutritious way to help them maintain what they feel is healthy and what they feel is good. And so there are more than one way to kind of do some of this. But again, the food choices, I think, are some of the most critical things that you're ever going to learn. And when it comes to the actual foods, we've talked about it a million times, but some of the foods that I love eggs, and I love all forms of meat. Vegetables I would throw in there. I do enjoy fruit, but I think for this particular video and what we've been talking about here, and we've been talking about you having better food choices, I would even throw fruit into the mix. When normally I would leave fruit out of any sort of keto talk or any sort of carnivore talk. But for this purpose, it's actually important to have something like fruit. It's actually probably important to have a little bit of dairy, because a little bit of yogurt, a little bit of cottage cheese, and or some fruit can really go a long way into giving people just a little bit different flavor, a little bit different food, rather than just kind of the same old things over and over again. It just doesn't seem to make any sense why we continue to choose these shitty foods. We know they're not great for us. We know they don't help us towards our goal. We know they're not helping us with weight loss. But there we are, 7, 8, 9 p.m. at night, eating them again. And then we wake up the next day and we say, today's going to be better. Today's going to be awesome. You start the day out maybe with some fasting. You go through the day and you do pretty good. And then it's 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and there you are again. Eating the potato chips, eating the Cheez-Its, a lot of it comes down to like just having the discipline to not even buy these things in the first place. And, or just like realizing that they're not for you. They're not part of your diet at the moment, especially when you're trying to lose weight. So it can be really frustrating, because you're like, I don't really understand. It's almost like a way to disrespect yourself every single day, and you kind of don't understand why you're doing it. I think the reason why we end up doing stuff like that is because we are literally addicted. It's an addiction. You're stuck. You do not need it. Like, just think, I want you to think for a little bit here. I want you to think, could you personally eat 10% less than what you normally eat? 20% less? 30% less? 40% less? 50% less? You know, like, most of us are being reasonable, even though I'm not a calorie counter. I'm not counting steps. I don't do all that stuff because I think that if I just continually make the right choices, that I'll want to move the amount that I need to move, and I won't really have to worry about any of it. That's the way that I like to look at it. But because we are addicted to food, and because we are making poor food choices, then we have to spend more time trying to figure this whole puzzle out. Food is actually time. The worse you are with food, the more time you have to spend thinking about it, worrying about it. The more weight that the food has packed onto your body, most likely the more time you're going to spend either being sick or figuring out ways of trying to lose that weight. It's really frustrating. It really is. It's really annoying. It's really frustrating. It's something that I forgot to mention, and it's one of the most important pieces of the puzzle in all of this. Why are we addicted? Okay, we know the food companies have spent a lot of money on making sure these things hit our palate just the right way. Beyond the sweetness, beyond the fat, beyond the sugar and salt combo, there's also like a mouthfeel that goes along with everything. There's also a smell, a scent that goes with everything. But even beyond that, we have poor light environment. And I mentioned it before, it's going to be really hard to out-diet and to out-train a poor light environment. Well, what the hell is a light environment? You've heard me talk about it briefly before, but if you're not getting up and seeing the sun, I'm not saying you have to see the sun the second that it pops up, but if you're not getting outside in the morning, you're not getting some of that sunlight the first couple hours of the day, it's going to make everything that you're doing just a little bit tougher. It's going to make everything that you're doing just a little bit harder. You can choose not to believe me, that's fine. But if you're fat and you want to make a big change, I want you to just try this. Start to build a habit of seeing the sun come up every day. And just try it for 2 or 3 months and see if there's any difference at all. If there's no difference, there's no difference. But we need light and we need dark. So now comes the hard part. You thought the diet was hard, try this on for size. You have to also try to figure out a way to mitigate and to manage the amount of blue light you're exposed to. There's a simple solution for it. There's kind of a simple solution for it. You could trade out a lot of your lights at your house just for some red bulbs. Doesn't have to be any fancy bulbs, just find some ones that are red. You can just do some research, look up some stuff, and you'll find more information on what kind of lights you can use and so on. But just red bulbs. You don't have to replace all the bulbs in your house because you're like, wait, I can't see. It's kind of the point, is that you can't see. Get yourself some blue light blocking glasses. Try not to bathe in blue light. Blue light a lot of times is coming from up overhead. If the blue light is here, it's a different impact because it's not hitting our eyes the same way. So a lot of times our kitchen lights and so on are up higher. So if you can make some small changes and have the lights be lower. I know some of you right now are probably like, I don't understand what the hell he's talking about. Why is he saying this to us? The TV and your food and video games, there is zero question that those things are connected very, very strongly, right? Maybe it's the dopamine from the food. Maybe it's the dopamine from the video game. Maybe it has more to do with what's on the TV. Maybe it has more to do with what you're eating while you're watching TV. Maybe. Just maybe. But maybe it's the motherfucking blue light that's causing some problems, that's causing some disruption. I mean, this is real stuff. This is real information. This is real science that's coming out. More and more of it's coming out. And I'm just trying to give it to you guys as soon as I find out or hear about it. We do know that your body builds and holds melatonin. It builds it up in the morning from seeing the morning sunlight. We know that. We also know it gets depleted. It gets depleted by blue light. And it won't get released until it's dark. So you need darkness. You need darkness for a while. So if you're really struggling to get away from these blue lights, the easiest thing to do is just get some blue light blocking glasses. That's a really good start. Get the yellow ones, get the reddish orange ones. The yellow ones are great, and that blocks blue light to a certain degree. But the red ones, they block out the rest of it. What you'll notice is if you start putting that on about an hour or two before you go to bed, you're going to start to fatigue, you're going to start to just feel tired, and you're going to want to go to bed anyway. So it's really a beautiful thing. So look into some of that, not just for me, but more so for yourself. If you think what I'm saying is bullshit, that's great. I want you to investigate it. I want you to look it up more. And maybe you'll find out that it is bullshit. Maybe you'll look into a couple different people and you'll be like, yep, Nick Norowitz and this other guy said it's bullshit. Okay, it's bullshit. That's fine, but I don't think you're gonna find that anywhere. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness is never strength. Catch you guys later. Bye.